Andorra has a unique and fascinating history shaped by its geographical isolation in the Pyrenees Mountains and its relationship with neighboring powers. Here is a detailed account of Andorra's history. Pre-Roman and Roman period. The early history of Andorra is somewhat obscure, but archaeological findings suggest that the area has been inhabited since prehistoric times. During the Roman Empire, the region was likely influenced by Roman culture, although it remained on the periphery of the empire. Andorra's location in the Pyrenees made it a remote and isolated place. Early Middle Ages, 8th–9th century. Andorra's origins as a distinct entity are traditionally linked to the 9th century. According to legend, Charlemagne, the king of the Franks and Holy Roman Emperor, granted a charter of independence to the people of Andorra in gratitude for their help in fighting the Moors, who had invaded the Iberian Peninsula. This is largely mythological, but it points to the growing sense of autonomy in the region during this period. In the early Middle Ages, Andorra became part of the Marca Hispanica, a buffer zone established by the Carolingian Empire to protect the Christian kingdoms of the north from the Muslim-ruled regions in the south. The founding of the co-principality, 1278. Andorra's political structure as a co-principality emerged in the late 13th century. At the time, the region was disputed between two local lords, the Count of Foix, from France, and the Bishop of Urgell, from Spain. The dispute was resolved in 1278 with the signing of the Paritge Agreement, which established Andorra as a feudal co-principality ruled by both the Count of Foix and the Bishop of Urgell. This arrangement marked the beginning of Andorra's status as a jointly ruled state, with the co-princes serving as symbolic rulers. Over time, the French monarchy inherited the rights of the Count of Foix, and later, the President of France became the co-prince alongside the Bishop of Urgell. Medieval and early modern period. Throughout the Middle Ages and into the early modern period, Andorra remained a small, isolated, and rural society. Its economy was based on agriculture, and it was largely self-sufficient. Its geographic isolation in the mountains protected it from most of the political and military upheavals that affected neighboring France and Spain. The co-princes rarely interfered in Andorra's internal affairs, allowing it to develop its own local governance. Andorra had a representative assembly, known as the Conseil de la Terre, Council of the Land, which was established in 1419 and is one of the oldest parliaments in Europe. 19th century, French Revolution and Napoleonic influence. The French Revolution, 1789–1799, and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte posed a challenge to Andorra's traditional political system. The revolution abolished the feudal system in France, and for a time, Andorra's ties to France were disrupted. However, in 1806, Napoleon restored the co-principality system, reaffirming France's role in Andorra's governance. 20th century, modernization and political reforms. In the 20th century, Andorra began to modernize, though it remained isolated for much of the early part of the century. Key moments include World War I and II. Andorra was not directly involved in either World War, but it remained neutral. In fact, Andorra technically remained in a state of war with Germany following World War I because it was left out of the Treaty of Versailles, 1919. This was only officially resolved in 1958. Political reforms. In the early 20th century, Andorra experienced internal political tensions, including disputes over the influence of the co-princes. In 1933, France briefly sent troops to restore order during a political crisis. Over time, these tensions led to demands for more democratic governance. World War II and aftermath. During World War II, Andorra remained neutral and was an important smuggling route between Vichy France and Francoist Spain. After the war, Andorra began to modernize rapidly, with the development of its tourist and banking sectors. 1993, the Constitution and full sovereignty. One of the most significant events in Andorra's modern history occurred in 1993 when it adopted its first written constitution. The constitution transformed Andorra from a feudal co-principality into a modern parliamentary democracy while retaining the two co-princes as ceremonial heads of state. The 1993 constitution also affirmed Andorra's full sovereignty, allowing it to become a member of international organizations such as the United Nations, which it joined in 1993, and the Council of Europe. Andorra also entered into agreements with its neighbors and other countries to regulate taxation and other matters, gradually losing its status as a tax haven. 21st century, economic challenges and EU relations. In the 21st century, Andorra has faced challenges related to its economy, which is heavily dependent on tourism, banking, and duty-free shopping. The global financial crisis of 2008 and increased international pressure to regulate its banking sector have led to reforms. Andorra is not a member of the European Union but uses the euro as its currency under an agreement with the EU. The country has been negotiating with the EU to establish closer economic ties. Culture and society. Despite its modernization, Andorra has retained its distinct cultural identity, with Catalan as the official language and a strong influence of both French and Spanish cultures. The Roman Catholic Church remains influential in Andorra, and the country has preserved many of its medieval traditions and festivals. Summary. Andorra's history is characterized by its unique political status as a co-principality and its ability to maintain autonomy despite being sandwiched between larger powers. From its feudal roots in the Middle Ages to its emergence as a modern parliamentary democracy in the late 20th century, Andorra has successfully balanced tradition and modernity while preserving its distinct identity. Today, Andorra is known for its beautiful landscapes, strong tourism sector, and its status as a small but fully sovereign European state.